All right, we're gonna talk about gaming monitor today. So this one's coming from Viewsonic's the XG272-2K-OLED. You heard that right. It's a 1440p OLED. Up until now, if you wanted an OLED screen, other than two units that existed that I could think of from Corsair and LG, which were actually the same screen, you had to get 4K and you were stuck with, well, a huge format and as well as a huge price. So let's see what happens now when you get one of the earliest 2K or 1440p gaming OLED panels on the market. iBuyPower's custom PC builder, you get the fun of customization without the confusion of part-to-part compatibility. Mix and match top brands like Intel, Microsoft, Western Digital, Asus, and more. The tool provides a compatibility check so you know exactly which components will work with your build. Make your PC as unique as you when you customize your build with RGB fans and other components. And the best part about all this, they build it for you. Spend less time stressing and spend more time gaming. To start configuring your next dream PC, follow the link in the description below. So full disclosure, Viewsonic did send us this unit to take a look at, but I barely got any details with it. So we're gonna kind of figure it out together. Some of the key specs, and you can see on this one, it's white. It does come available in white and black, is that it is a 240 hertz panel. That's another thing that typically OLEDs were locked to was like 120 hertz, especially like the C9 TVs and the I think the G8s or G9s from LG. In fact, the TV I'm using as a monitor is also an OLED LG TV that has 120 hertz gaming mode. And one of the drawbacks of using TVs like I am right now, which is my 42-inch bendable motorized LG TV, which doubles as a gaming monitor with 120 hertz refresh rate, like 0 point something milliseconds black to black, or I think it's gray. No, it's actually black to black because it's OLED. The problem is input lag. Input lag exists on the TVs because they're not built to do just one thing, which is get you an extremely fast image. So unfortunately, I've been dealing with a little bit of controller input latency on the TV. This, on the other hand, is extremely fast because it's designed to do one thing, which is a gaming panel. It's not designed with all the AI functions and screen smoothing and all other crap built into a TV. And this has a 0.02 millisecond response time. That is insane. So high refresh rate, extremely fast response time, and I'm really got my fingers crossed that any sort of input lag is not there. But the other thing too regarding this is it's not a very bright OLED, it's 450 nits. I think that's plenty of brightness for a computer screen, which is gonna be very close to your eyes. Most of the time TVs, and it does have a remote control, which is kind of nice to have, I guess. You're not fumbling around with trying to push buttons you can't see. Anyway, TVs tend to be a lot brighter at like 1,000 nits plus because they are intended to be seen from much farther away in big rooms and to overcome like ambient lighting with like windows and all that sort of stuff in rooms. So TVs overall are just much, much brighter. Unfortunately, that extra brightness also is what sometimes leads to a little bit of the input lag, to be honest. And there's a lot of science behind that. We won't get into that today, but this I expect will be a much more friendly experience for competitive type gaming. My one gripe is I've been using Viewsonic monitors for years now, and I really like the 32-inch panels. I like a big screen. So with it being a 27-inch, to me that seems to come off a little bit on the small side. Some might say it's average. I think it's small. But there it is right there. And as you can see, it is a matte screen. So that's something that's also nice to have regarding it being a dedicated computer panel, is the fact that it has a matte screen. Now that means the colors are probably gonna be a little bit less vibrant than you would see as like an OLED TV, because a glossy screen actually enhances those contrast ratios a little bit, or in saturation when it comes to the colors. So what we get in here is a power brick that is external. So you gotta have this inline. We do get an 8K HDMI cable. Obviously, because it's not 8K, it is 1440p, but because it's also 240 hertz, it just means they're giving you a very high speed data cable for your HDMI. So that's what's also nice, that HDMI now is fast enough to where you can even go 4K, like 120 hertz and not have a problem. So we have a USB 3A connector because there is a hub built into this. It also has a USB-C and a USB-B on the back, but the USB-C is also a 15-watt charger. So you can use that for tablets or smartphones or any sort of USB-C powered device. The stand is pretty simple here. It's gonna be a toolless, I might as well just assemble it for you right now. It's a toolless click-in design. On the back, which you can see is also a VESA mount, which is something that neither of the OLED panels that I've had in here have been able to do. The Corsair, I think it was the Xeneon Flex, cannot do a VESA mount. One, it's very heavy, and two, it's all built into the base and stuff for the electronics. The motorized bendable screen, which I'm using from LG, also cannot do that because, again, all the electronics are in the base. For it to be able to bend, it's just the panel with like a ribbon cable going to it. All the guts are in the base. So that means we can actually use a base mount on this for a flexible desk-mounted arm or something if we wanted. And then we have a built-in thumb screw in the base so that we never have to go looking for a screwdriver. We can just click it right on in there and then tighten that down. As you can see, the monitor is truly assembled in about 30 seconds at the most. So there it is, right there. All right, so in terms of connectivity on the back, like I said, we do have a USB-A input, USB-A 3.0 input on the back, which will connect your monitor or your PC tower, giving you 3 USB-As. We do have a USB-C on here, which I said doubles as a charger, 2 display ports, 2 HDMI ports, a headphone jack, which also can, this does have speakers in there, by the way. They're just 3-watt speakers, but it gives you some sound, I guess, if you need it. But as you can see, it also rotates both directions, which is nice. So if you want to use this as a vertical panel for, I don't know, Spotify, or I know I've done a lot of videos where I watch people's setups, and I'm always find their vertical panels like this tend to be double duty, like a small Spotify like header and then like a Discord monitor. That's all it is, it's just Discord. And I think a lot of people spend a lot of time in Discord now, so they just always have one panel dedicated to that. So we also do have tilt, so it can tilt up and down. So it looks like it goes down about 5 degrees, up about 15 degrees, which is pretty standard. And then we do have a few degrees of swivel. Not a lot, but some. And it swivels right here in the base, as you can see. The base is actually hinged. So even though I got this big rubber foot, it doesn't slide or anything when you go to hinge or swivel it. I also like the fact that it's got this little cup right here. So I tend to be the kind of person that every now and then has like little things on the desk or whatever, or I might take my ring off or something when I'm gaming. Sometimes my hands get fat. They're always fat, but that gives you an area to put stuff so you don't lose it. That's kind of nice, actually. Who cares about all that stuff? We want to know, how does it perform as a monitor? And it's got AMD FreeSync Premium. It's also G-Sync certified. I don't know if it's actually G-Sync certified or if it's G-Sync module in there. I'd be surprised if it had the module in there, but given the fact that I'll go ahead and say the price on this, $899, that's a very expensive 1440p panel. That's because of the OLED. It's shrunk down and put into a screen like this. Believe it or not, OLED is more, like for whatever reason, the inch to price ratio is higher for smaller screens than larger formats. I don't know why that is with OLEDs, but it just is. But realistically, it's just the place for the, once you get it in there, like, boop, then you can get it out. I like my idea better of using it for rings and stuff. Size-wise too, let's compare it to a 32-inch. So this is our Elite 4K panel that we use for our bench testing and stuff. As you can see, the 32-inch panel versus a 27-inch panel, it's pretty significant. Viewsonic, please tell me you have a 32-inch version of this coming. Although 32 inches in 1440p. Okay, so I've got it hooked up right now, and my very first impressions are, it's like a bezel within a bezel. So I'm not a fan of that. It is not edge to edge, so I'm not sure how much of that 27 inches we're actually getting as viewable. I feel like it's gonna be significantly smaller than that. We have like a 1/4 inch, maybe closer to almost a 1/2 inch bezel on the top and on the sides. It's an even thicker black bezel on the bottom. And then we have a plastic like bezel underneath that, which hangs down beyond that 16:9 aspect ratio. So it's like a bezel within a bezel with a thin bezel in between them. So don't like that, because that's very distracting. That's the first thing I thought was like, I thought there was something maybe wrong with like overscan or maybe the viewable / because you can go in here and you can change. And by the way, the remote control is very slow to respond. Like you can't give it too many presses at a time. You gotta take your time. Anyway, if I go back to display, you can see there is a view scale. And so I thought the view scale might have not been scaled up until I realized there's actually no backlight behind those. So if I come back here and I changed it to, I was like, oh, you can change it to 21:9 or 16:9, but it's a 21.5 inch screen at that point. And then you can go all the way up to like 24 inch screen. I don't know why you would want to shrink it within, but you can for whatever reason. One thing I want to point out too is like, we'll try and get it on camera, but when you look in the black area down here, like every few inches there's two like weird lighter colored dimples in there, which to me is a little distracting. I thought maybe it was like lifting or something, but it's not. It's just like, I think it's just the way it's constructed. It could be, I don't think there's any sort of an ambient light sensor there, nor would it be all the way across like that. Typically it would just be one little thing that looks like a camera. That would be an ambient light sensor, but that's not it. Anyway, moving on through the menu, we get the typical stuff you'd expect: your brightness, your contrast, blue light filter, sharpness, viewable scale, color, temperature, all the typical stuff. Contrast is at 70 right now. My brightness is at 100. I want to see what happens if I up that contrast, because OLED. So that would be the full 450 nits right there. Now, right now I'm full contrast and full brightness, and I still feel like it's a little dim, but you have to enable HDR to get the full 450 nits, honestly, because then it extends that, that dynamic range. Now you can see it's quite a bit brighter. Like, maybe you can't, I don't know, it's a camera pointing at a screen that's emitting light at a lens with a light sensor. So your panel brightness is gonna affect how this looks and everything. So it's kind of like doing audio reviews. You guys can't hear what we hear, but we just have to sort of explain it. But anyway, HDR is now enabled, and it definitely has a brighter look to it, but it's only 450 nits. It's not crazy bright. And because it's such a small screen at 27 inches, I feel like if it was like a brighter, let's say 1,000 nits, it'd be like an LED flashlight in your face. I think this brightness is probably okay. But yeah, anyway, so the rest of the settings and stuff, if we go through it, we do get variable refresh rate, as you can see right here, which is currently off. Now this is gonna be like, for instance, our FreeSync and our G-Sync and all that sort of stuff. It's currently off right now. I am gonna turn that on because I do have a 4080 Super hooked up to this. So that's a lot of graphics card for a 1440p panel. So we kind of want that sync tech to be in there. Now it's saying G-Sync compatible display is connected. Kind of surprised it's not on by default. It also has BFI, or black frame insertion, minimum hertz. So you can turn it on and off right there, but because we're in HDR, we don't get it to turn it on or off, and we don't get to adjust the strength, but we can adjust the minimum hertz. That's how often, I guess, it's gonna be inserting a black frame. That's supposed to be helping with like motion blur and stuff like that. I've never personally messed around with BFI. I'm not going to right now. I'm gonna leave it exactly where it's at, but I do have it set to 240 hertz right now. So if it was gonna be every other frame and our graphics card is able to push 240 hertz in our games, I would assume we want it set to 120. But I'm gonna leave it at 60 right now because that's where it's defaulted. Let's see what that looks like. First things first, we're gonna go to the UFO test website. You can do this, that is actually really sharp. So you can do this on your panel if you wanna compare UFO, or testufo.com, and then what it does is it just basically does full refresh rate, half rate, quarter rate, and then it will show you what ghosting and imaging looks like on your screen through motion. If yours has all kinds of trails and stuff behind it, it means you probably have a very slow response time type of panel. If you have skipping, that means you have a low refresh rate panel. If you have skipping and ghosting, it means your panel sucks at both. And it's very possible that many people's panels are like that. But I've rarely seen one this crisp, to be honest. And we haven't done any sort of overdrive or anything because, to be honest, I didn't see that option even in here. OLEDs tend to not really have an overdrive capability because each pixel is emitting its own light. We are not doing anything with pixel gating. We're not doing anything with backlighting in terms of manipulating the way that the pixels operate. Each pixel is emitting light itself, which is why OLEDs give you the deepest blacks, because that means it is literally off with the contrast ratio of OLED is nearly infinite. Okay, so this to date might be some of the smoothest we've seen because this is the first time I've ever looked at an OLED panel that's above 120 hertz. So this might be the start of the future of what panels are gonna be like. Now the question with OLED, which most people are gonna have, which is very fair, is one, burn-in rate. What is burn-in gonna be like? Obviously we have a taskbar on down here. This doesn't tend to change very often. So that means functionality like pixel shift and pixel sweep needs to be a thing. So pixel shift is where over time, it slowly moves things over a pixel or two. And then what happens is if it detects that the image isn't moving, it actually does it very covertly. Like you don't really know it's doing it. It's so subtle, you don't notice it. But it just keeps the pixels moving around slightly so you're not having that one pixel lit with that one color constantly so it doesn't burn in. The other thing is pixel sweep, which you find in TVs, is it's a process of actually causing those pixels to kind of get unstuck if they ever get stuck is the best way to put it, but it's not physically getting stuck. It's just the color got burned in. Pixel sweeping is where it can actually sweep the pixels and then trying to clean off any sort of burned-in image. It has a whole process. There's even a website you can go to which just constantly flashes different colors and things, which is good for OLED health and helps unstick LCD pixels if those ever get stuck. I don't see any functionality in here for any sort of the pixel stuff. So we got audio adjustment, quick access, boot up screen, OSD background, pivot, power indicator, auto power off, and sleep. There's also eco mode, which we don't have access to technically because we are in a performance gaming mode, which reduces eco mode or turns it off. The speakers in it are garbage. They're for nothing more, I think, than just making sure sound works on your system. They're worse than any laptop we own.
Actually, it might be worse than a phone at this point.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't think that's a selling point, but I think for the price range that we're talking here, it should be better. Ultra settings, no HDR, or excuse me, no ray tracing, only because we're trying to up the frame rate right now, because I want to know whether or not we're getting like tearing. So I'm going to be doing like not FreeSync, but G-Sync, or let me do that again. We're going to be turning off like FX or FSR. We're going to be turning off AMD FSR, but we are going to run DLSS frame gen. We are going to be running, where is it? There it is, DLSS super resolution. We'll set it to balanced, sure. I think it'll look just fine on a 1440p panel. Oh, it's pretty though. The HDR is so nice, look at this. The way you're almost getting like what looks like a lens flare. It's kind of faked, I guess, because it's not ray tracing, but.
That looks good.
Yeah. Why is it like obligatory to just start shooting?
So I started blasting. Just cut.
Got him.
Nice.
Oh, they finally got me. They're super soldiers. So it doesn't matter like what it looks like. We need to compare what it looks like to FPS. So as you can see, I'm getting 222 to 20 FPS. It's pretty solid. Makes sense that it wouldn't be tearing because we're not going too far above that. So let's see what happens if I make it even more FPS. Yeah, so we're above it right there, but not enough to ever make it tear, I don't think. Yeah, I feel like 240 Hertz is quickly becoming the next, like 60 Hertz for many years was like the minimum standard. But I think 240 Hertz might be the new target that people are gonna start looking for in the next like few years here, being kind of the standard, especially as you have like FSR and DLSS, which are pushing frame rates up even more, frame regen, making it so that not just the horsepower of your graphics card determines your frame rate, but also what a lot of these new technologies are with AI upscaling and such. The only thing with this panel specifically that I am not a fan of is, well, besides the price, because it is pretty expensive. It's one of those things that OLED panel pricing is kind of all over the place right now, depending on who like the ODM panel supplier is. But there's so many different form factors out there. Most of them are 4K. There's even some ultra wides. Now we're talking about 27-inch, high refresh rate gaming panels. 240 Hertz looks absolutely amazing. Just this bezel really feels like it needs to be improved, as far as I can tell. I don't know why it's like they really should have brought this as close to edge as they could on the bottom. This extra plastic along the bottom with the black bezel, and then the taskbar. It just looks like it's floating above from where it should be. Like it really feels like it should be all the way down to at least this plastic bezel here. So anyway, there you go. Taking a look at the new OLED panel from Viewsonic. For me personally, I need a bigger panel than 27, but I think, I was talking about this off camera, I think 27-inch panels are big for a lot of people because most people tend to stick around 24. I've just been looking at either 42-inch screen or my 38-inch ultra wide at home. I'm just 16 by 9, 27 seems very small, but that's subjective. That's my opinion. It may not be yours. I need you guys to sign off down below at this price point at 900 bucks. How do you think this lands? Do you feel like it's a panel you would consider? Or do you feel like maybe it's just a little too lopsided in price to specs? I'm kind of torn on this one because I feel like the 900 bucks versus some of the stuff that we're looking at here is a little bit too much a drawback for that price point. I feel like if Viewsonic made this an edge-to-edge panel, maybe up the nits a little bit. 450 is all right, but I think that's like, 400 is a minimum standard you need to even be considered HDR. Maybe consider making an ultra-wide version, Or like a 32-inch 4K OLED would also be nice to see, but I'm a little scared of what that price could be. So anyway, there you go, guys. It's part of like the bleeding edge tech. You know, OLED right now is some of the most expensive panels that you can get. So this is where you guys sound off in the comments below. They will be reading the comments, I guarantee it. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.